I am so excited to give you all a little brief sneak peek into what I'm going to be teaching at the PESI Attachment Summit. My name is Eli Harwood. I'm a licensed therapist. I have been practicing for more than 17 years, which feels mind-blowing. Like, how did that even happen? And I go by the moniker, the Attachment Nerd, because my passion is attachment. I recently authored a book called Securely Attached: Transform Your Attachment Patterns into Loving, Lasting Romantic Relationships. And it's not just focused on romance, but marketing. So we had to pick a lane. That's the lane we picked. In the training that we're going to do for PESI, I'm going to be speaking a lot about the therapeutic context. So we're entering therapy, whether it's with an individual or with families or with couples. How do we assess what's happening in terms of attachment? And then how do we use attachment research and approaches and interventions to help our clients heal and build the type of relationships that help them to thrive in their lives? This specific training, we're going to focus more on family systems. And so let's say we're working with a family and the family has written in to say that they are struggling with the child. The child is acting out and melting down and being defiant, and maybe language is being used. Maybe there's a previous diagnosis of this child has oppositional defiant disorder. Okay, so now we bring in this case. What do we do? So if we're coming at it from an attachment lens, so we're thinking developmentally, relationally, in terms of generational trauma inheritance, how are we going to approach this family in a way that could ultimately help the parents, help the child, help the relationship between the parent and the child get to a place where it's in sync, so that they can get into a cooperative mode instead of maybe this space that feels like, there's defiance and we want compliance, but no, there's defiance and we want compliance. So what are we going to do? Just to give you a couple of little thoughts to get your juices going on this. The first thing we want to do is we want to always make sure that we are establishing ourselves connection with whoever is in the position of caregiver or parent, because we need their buy-in. And inside of every single parent, there is a child, right? We all have that inner child. We all have those experiences from childhood that have shaped the way we think about needs, the way we think about emotions, the way we relate to our bodies, ourselves, and others. So if I'm working with a family, the very first thing I'm thinking is, how can I see the dignity in the way that the parents are currently approaching their child, or in the way that the family system is currently malfunctioning / functioning, right? Because even malfunction is a form of function, right? So we're gonna be curious with them. What's their story? What are the things they believe and see? And we're gonna be working to model for our families a deep sense of attunement to them. Because when we come in and we are kind of distancing ourselves from the family, or we can automatically often see, oh, something feels problematic here. I don't love the way that, this parent just talked about this child, or the way the energy is in the room, like the way that the child's looking down and uncomfortable, and the parent doesn't seem to be noticing and just continues to talk about all the bad things the child is doing. Yes, we're going to see all those things. And we're going to want to intervene as quickly as possible, because in the context, we are aware of how little power a child has. And so there's going to be a knee-jerk reaction inside of us to kind of go into a rescuer mode. And we want to be very cautious not to do that, because if we go into a rescuer mode, we're going to start to create teams in therapy. And we're going to be viewed as a member of a team instead of being viewed as the container for the family system. So we're trying to hold both. This is about acknowledging within our own bodies and our nervous systems that 99% of parents are doing the best they can with what they have. And so if they've come into family therapy, it's because they don't know what else to do. Maybe they've been mandated into family therapy. Okay, that's a different situation. However, they're still doing the best they can with what they have. And we want to see them in their dignity. Why are they doing this? A parent might have a really harsh mentality about how they relate to their child's tender needs or behavior. Why? Well, they probably inherited that from their caregivers. And so how do we help create the type of dynamic between us and them that will give them the sense of trust that will allow us to slowly invite them into recognizing and understanding the relational patterns that are present in their world right now? and where they came from. And then we can slowly engineer discussions around attachment. And I personally love to talk about it overtly, because I think the more that we can communicate to families, there's data on this, there's research on this is what it's called, this is what we know about it, the less it has to be about my opinion and your opinion, or this is why what you're doing is bad parenting and why I have the answer as the therapist and I can give you this good answer. It's, hey, here's what I'm seeing. Here's what I've learned here. Let's sit with this together and be curious about maybe we could try some of these things, or let's talk a little bit more about what do you know about your story? Was there a legacy of secure attachment, and how do we know that? And I'm going to go through some really easy language for communicating this with families, because I find that, as we start to get into the research, most of you are probably attachment nerds also like me. So it's like, ooh, let's talk about the fact that there's the developmental research on this, and then there's the social psychology research on this, and they use different labels, and resistant, ambivalent is the same thing as, anxious in this category. And actually they don't correlate. Like you and I can geek out on that. And we'll do a little bit of geeking in this training. But I find what most clinicians are longing to hear is, yeah, but like, how do I take that and bring that to families? So we'll talk about some really simple ways to describe the difference between the 4 general attachment patterns and the what we know about the parenting patterns that create those attachment patterns in kids, and then how we can begin to restore a synchronous connected relationship between parents and children in the present moment so that secure patterns start to evolve in the family and take over. We're also going to talk a little bit about what do we do in the context of family situations where a caregiver does not appear willing in any way, shape, or form to engage. What do we do with those really stuck parents that are just want you to fix the kid because the kid is the problem? And how do we manage our own reactions and our own nervous systems in response to that data in the room? And then we're just going to really dig into all the little nitty gritties of what happens in the therapy room. Because what happens when we are able to be deeply attuned and present to a family system, and we're able to stay regulated even in the presence of their dysregulation, and we're able to help reflect back to them underlying dignity in the things they've been doing and hopeful ideas about what they can be doing to move forward, incredible things can happen in a family system. I mean, I have seen families who are so disconnected, they are at the brink of breaking, and move into a space where they've learned how to be synchronous. They've learned how to mirror and listen, and the power that comes from being connected to each other. And moved away from a more behavioral model that says my job is to make you do X, Y, or Z, and your job is to do what I tell you to. Okay, now we're shifting out of that, and we're shifting into, this is the most important bond in our world, is this family bond, is this attachment bond. You and what you feel matters to me. And I'm going to help you navigate these complex things that happen in your life. I'm not just going to be a passive parent. I'm not going to be a permissive parent. But I am going to help you learn the things you need to learn so that you can thrive. And I'm going to listen to you, and I'm going to connect to you, and I'm going to feel you. And that is going to be this incredible, transformative thing that happens in the life of our family. In my story, I was 9 years old when my mom decided that she was going to go get help. And she actually checked herself into a psychiatric hospital because at the time she was near the edge of ending her life. Before that point in my journey, things were really chaotic in our attachments and in our world. But she made this conscious effort to go get help. And I'm so thankful that the people that she got help from were empathetic. They were attuned to her. They didn't shame her. They didn't tell her, well, you're doing a lot of terrible things, and that's probably why your kids are, struggling in X, Y, Z. They helped her understand her story. And as she was able to reflect on her story and the generational legacy of trauma that she inherited on both sides of her family, she could also begin to reflect on the generational inheritance that my dad had. He didn't do as much reflecting as she did, but she could begin to see, oh, this is what's happening for him. This is what's happening for me. And then this is how it's playing out in the lives of our children. And she had to put in ongoing work, but she did. And as she did that, she cultivated a pathway for us where we could begin to be curious about our own experiences and those early years before she got help. And as we were able to digest some information about what was happening in our family system and how it was related to attachment, we could let go of some of that trauma. We could grieve it, release it, and then begin to see ourselves different in the world. And for me, I'm like the success story. I am someone who has been so deeply blessed by having a therapeutic community that knew how to help us process our stories, learn to connect, and learn to let go of some of the things that we didn't have control over. That I could now be a mama and not be living in a constant state of trauma and have a deep supportive support network. And that is what we want for all of our people. We want our people to know, here's what happened to you. Here's how it's affected your coping. Here's what it looks like to grieve. And here is what it looks like to move into more secure patterns, both for yourself and your own life, and also for future generations. I just can't wait to be with you all. We're going to pull out so many tricks and tips and interventions and scripts and things that you can be using in therapy to help your beloved clients begin to develop secure attachment relationships. All right. I can't wait to see you all there. Yay!